Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville, in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts, in the shadow of the great Blue Hills. We are so delighted and so very honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer to reading and giving parents the tools they need to teach their kids that everybody in their life deserves to be loved, respected, and included. Please be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Bob Hartman. He is here to celebrate the Clever Cub picture book series. Before we invite Bob into the studio, we want to invite all the authors that are listening to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page to find out how you can be a guest here on the podcast. Being a guest gives you the chance in a long-form conversation to tell thousands of people about your fantastic book, about you, about your brand. Tell them about your inspiration, why you want to write children's books. At readingwithyourkids.com, you can also find out how you can submit your book to our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read panel. If they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Certified Great Read. And with that status comes a number of really powerful tools that can help your book stand out from the crowd of books that are published every single month. I bet when you sat down to start writing your children's book, you had no idea that there are thousands of books published every single month. It's true. We can help you stand out. Oh, you can also learn about our really fantastic monthly promotion program. We'll promote your book through commercials here on the podcast, through messages to our 77,000 plus social media followers, and also display your book on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. Our billboards can be found in Boston, Atlanta, Sacramento, Los Angeles, Albany, New York, Toledo, Ohio, and Hermiston, Oregon. What a great way to let people know about your book. Find out all about this and more at readingwithyourkids.com. Join us right now from the United Kingdom. Our guest is here today to celebrate a wonderful series of children's picture books called Clever Cub. Please welcome to the show, Bob Hartman. Hey, Bob, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. How about you?
I'm doing pretty wonderful. I'm really excited to learn about Clever Cub. Tell us about this story, please.
Well, the whole idea was to have a character through whom the kids could learn about the Bible stories. So he gets into different scrapes and different situations, and his mom or his dad sits down, and they kind of go through the Bible stories together. So it really is kind of setting an example of parents sitting down reading through the Bible with their kids and helping them to understand what it's all about.
We've talked a lot here on the podcast about reading with your kids is a fantastic way, probably the best way to instill values and lessons with our kids, especially our young kids. I'm imagining this is just a really, really fun way to introduce kids to the Bible, but also to the person that the Bible is celebrating, Jesus.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, really, when you get right down to it, the Bible's mostly narrative in nature, isn't it? I mean, there's other kinds of genres in it, but mostly it's narrative. So the whole idea of actually telling God's story to the next generation is something that the Bible itself asks us to do. And that's exactly what it does. You introduce the kids to the story, and hopefully through being exposed to the stories, they meet the person the story is about.
Yeah, yeah. And for most of the life of the Bible, the stories were handed down orally.
Yes, yeah. A lot of them weren't written down until well after they were passed down from mouth to mouth, mouth to ear, mouth to ear. Yeah.
Yeah. So you are an ordained minister. Was it one thing that inspired the creation of this series?
A lot of things, actually. I mean, I am an ordained minister, and for years I was a pastor of a church, but also telling stories to the people in my church, adults sometimes, kids sometimes, And what I found was that when you kind of retold the Bible stories, it helped them become alive. It helped them get more interested in it. Sometimes you found a different way into the story, and you just found them leaning forward and being really interested. So I thought, well, why not apply that to the written word as well? And so Clever Cub is just one series amongst many different books that I've written that have tried to do that.
You know, you're a storyteller. I do some storytelling and performance. One of the things that I notice is those of us who go to church, we hear the Bible stories, and at this point, I'm almost 100 years old, so I've heard every story, maybe 1,000 times. And so often when you're in church, it's just kind of read like this, and the words go in one ear and out the other. And I remember a couple of times just my pastor, suggesting to me that I just imagine myself in the stories. And it made a huge difference. And I remember being with a group of kids, and the night before I had imagined myself in the boat with Jesus when he calmed the storm. And I asked the kids in my audience to kind of close their eyes and just imagine being on that boat, and the water is splashing, and it's cold and it's dark and you are terrified. And what a difference it made with the kids. That's the only way I want to experience the Bible now.
And see, that's what it's all about, isn't it? And that's what this series is about, because essentially that's what Mama Bear and Papa Bear do. They sit down with Clever Cub and they start telling him the story, and he asks questions. And even in the illustrations, suddenly he's not just sat there with them. He's in the story as well, observing what's going on. So it's exactly the kind of thing you're talking about. And you're right. Once you tell the story in a way that engages them and encourages them to be a part of the story, then everything changes. I mean, I always say that storytelling is all about, it's conversation more than performance. It's about actually asking, the people you're telling the story to come and join you and imagine the story along with you. And sometimes in the way that I do it, even do actions along with it, so that it helps to bring the story alive, just not in their eyes and ears, but in their bodies too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. What's the difference? What difference do you find in telling a story orally and telling it through the written word?
Well, generally speaking, when I do an oral story, I tend to have scripted it ahead of time, because a lot of it's quite interactive. I want to make sure I know where the interaction fits in, what I'm asking them to do, and how long I'm asking them to do it for. So I do often script it. But then once you get out there and the thing is in the air, then obviously, depending on the audience, changes work their way in. I mean, inevitably, because every audience is different. Mm-hmm. And I think that helps to bring it to life as well.
Yeah, that energy when you're in front of an audience. And also, I'm thinking a lot of times the Holy Spirit comes down and kind of whispers in our ears.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're not there by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I always say to people when I'm teaching them to tell Bible stories that it really is, it's us, it's God, it's the crowd, it's all of us together. It's all those relationships trying to bring that story to life.
Yeah. What is the one main message that you are hoping kids hear as they experience Clever Cub with their parents sitting on? What's the one thing you most want kids to walk away from after hearing the stories?
That God is there, that God loves them, that they can count on him being there. I think that's at the heart of all of the stories. Whether the stories have to do with some aspect of behavior, there's always that sense in which we'll know God is here. Okay, you might have made a mistake, but God forgives, he loves you, and he wants the best for you.
What a really comforting, encouraging, inspiring gift to give our kids, to let them know that, the kids are looking up to us and we are the most important person in their world at that time. And we're saying to them, there's somebody that's really important to me, and that's God. And God loves me. The God that created everything loves me and loves you and knows you. I think that's a beautiful gift to give to kids.
Well, it is. And the lovely thing about it is, obviously when you sit your child down in your lap and you tell them any story, there is a relationship there, isn't there, between you and them, and between all the two of you, the three of you, whatever, and the written word. And I think what happens is when it's God's word, it's a way of acknowledging that he's part of that relationship too. It kind of makes a complete package, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I understand you also created something called the YouVersion Bible app. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I did something for one organization, Hope. Many years ago, I retold Bible stories for their Bible Islands project, which was kind of like a games-based thing. And they approached me when that project was done and said, "Listen, we've got somebody else who wants us to do some stuff with them. Would you take these stories, which are like 500 or 600 words long, and reduce them to about 200 words, but keep the sense of it?" Okay. I was like, okay, well, I don't mind a bit of editing, but that's a lot of editing.
That's a lot.
So we took 40 of those stories and reduced them to that so that there were no more than, I think, 30 words on a panel. And then at the end of it, they said, well, this job has been commissioned by YouVersion because they're gonna use these stories as the basis for their Bible app for kids. So they hired an illustrator, they hired like an animator, a computer designer kind of person, so that the actual pages of each bit of the app are interactive. The words pop up, and actually you can listen to the words as well, or the parents can read them. But then when you press stuff on the screen, then all kinds of fun stuff happens. Monkeys throw bananas, and hippos, end up letting birds come out on their tongues. There's all sorts of wild stuff that happens. So that was the part I played. I played the part of the Bible storyteller, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. And I think we released that 2013, and we just passed the 80 million download mark, which is very encouraging.
That's a big congregation.
That's a huge congregation. Yes. It kind of knocks my socks off every time I think about it, because obviously if you write things, what you run is for people to read them, mm-hmm. And you want people to be moved and changed or whatever by them. So this has turned into a lovely, amazing kind of a surprise. And I'd like to think the kids all over the world, because it's in 40-some different languages, wow. have been blessed by it, and it's made a difference in their lives.
Wow. I'm thinking back to when I was a kid, when no one even thought of something called an app could exist. And there are a lot of people who wanted to introduce me, or were introducing me to Christ, and they would have frowned on something that talked about the Bible, that had bananas coming out of monkeys, and they would have said, "Hey, this is sacrilegious. This is too much fun." Have you heard any of that?
Yeah, I mean, over the course, I've been doing this for 30 years. So over the course of that time, you do run into people, or, look at faces in congregations when you're doing it, and pretty well work out that, some people are not having much fun. And some people have been quite explicit about, well, we shouldn't, take the Bible too lightly, et cetera, and so forth. And I always say to them, remember the story, the Aesop story about the wind and the sun. That competition about getting the man to take his coat off that the wind and the sun have in the story. And the wind blows and blows and blows as hard as it can, and the man just wraps up. But when the sun shines, that's when he takes his coat off. And I think that playfulness and humor actually kind of help the sun to shine, and that people are actually more open to truth when they're smiling mm-hmm. than when they're frowning. Mm-hmm. So and even if you read Jesus's own words, there's a lot of humor packed in there. There really is. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what we're called to do. Yeah,
absolutely. And I don't remember Jesus saying, "Come to me like all the old, crusty, miserable people." He said, "Come to me
right.
like the children."
Yep. As a matter of fact, that's the passage we're dealing with in church this coming Sunday. The one about the disciples saying, "Oh no, Jesus can't be bothered with kids," and he's like, "Oh no, hang on, mm-hmm. this is who I want. Bring him to me."
Yeah. I love this. Advice, please, for parents who really want to engage their kids and read not only Clever Cub with a lot of love and energy, but also when they sit down and read the Bible and do what you and I were talking about earlier, just getting the kids into the setting, maybe not necessarily making them terrified when they're on the boat and on the lake, but even just having them sit down and to really hear the words and feel the words when God says that he delights in us? How can we as parents be better storytellers?
I think the first thing you have to do is love the story yourself. It's hard to tell a story that you don't love. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the first thing you need to do as a parent is to love that story that you're passing on to your child, and to know what it is in that story that makes a difference to you. What makes you go wow whenever you read the story? Because if something makes you go wow, then it's going to make your kids go wow as well. So I would say read it yourself ahead of time and get a sense of who the characters are. And yeah, do the voices if you want. Why not? Have fun with it. I think the playfulness coupled with kind of the love of the story and the love of your kids makes the difference. What you want to do is invite them into that playful place, as opposed to saying, well, we're going to sit down and do something quite dutiful now. Mm-hmm. That's not going to hack it. You need to invite them into the playful place and be playful yourself.
Yeah. I remember a high school teacher telling me one time, the Bible at home was this sacred thing, and you couldn't, you didn't dare open it up when there was any kind of food in the room, for heaven forbid it might get dirty. And I remember one of my high school teachers, I went to a Jesuit high school, and saying, I want to see that Bible. I want to see it earmarked. I want to see highlights in it. I want to see notes and the spine all broken and crumpled, not because you disrespected it, but because you were reading it. It was being open every day, and you were taking notes and highlighting the things that were making your heart move.
Yeah, that's absolutely the right attitude. Years ago, I wrote something called the Lion Storyteller Bible, which was a retelling the Bible stories for people who wanted to tell the story, with the actions and everything in it. And what we did a few years ago was to take stories from that and create something called the Lion Family Bible. But the whole point was that it wasn't one of these family Bibles you bought and put on the shelf so that it would stay beautiful. Just like you said, the whole point was to take it down, open it up. And I even said in the introduction, by all means, write in this thing, draw in this thing, and make notes, because there's questions woven through it as well to help the families kind of deal with the text. But, write something down now, and then maybe in 2 or 3 years when you get back to the story, maybe your opinion about things will change, but you'll see that kind of progress. Use it, as you say, make it a tool, not just something that's pretty on a shelf.
Yeah. Bob, one of the things I wanted to ask you, I had a really interesting experience. My kids were very involved at our church when they were in high school, and I remember oftentimes other parents would come up to me and say, "Oh, I love seeing your kids up there. They're such great examples and role models." And this one mom in particular said to me, "I'm really afraid. My daughter's going to college next year, and I'm so worried because when kids get to college, they start to question their faith, and that's terrifying to me." And I said to her, I think that's great. I think it's great that kids can question their faith, because I think our faith can stand up to questions. What would you say to that parent?
I would say exactly what you said. And as a matter of fact, this family Bible I'm telling you about encourages families to do exactly that. The questions are leading questions. Well, what do you think about this? And why do you think this happened? And what would you have done in that situation? And how do you think that fits, with life today? All those kind of questions that I think we are afraid for our kids to consider. And the problem is, of course, that if they don't consider them with us, and if we don't have a chance to wrestle with the questions together, then they're going to be considering them on their own. And sometimes the people around them might not be as supportive, and help them as might be the case if we're the ones who are doing it. So I'd say, by all means, work through those things together ahead of time.
Yeah. That's why we encourage families to continue reading with their kids after the kids become independent readers, and through middle school, through high school, you don't have to sit down and read books aloud, but, when you go to church and you come home on that Sunday and you can discuss, what did you hear at church today? What was that Bible reading?
Yeah.
And then talk about it. And don't be afraid to have a difference of opinion, because God speaks to us all in different ways.
Exactly. I mean, it's interesting you should mention about reading when your kids get older. My son reminded me of something, and I had forgotten about it entirely. But when he and his sister were, I'd say they were probably younger teens. I mean, Chris was probably maybe 13. Carrie would have been, 15 maybe. We were still reading books out loud over dinner. And we were working through the Madeleine L'Engle series, Wrinkle in Time, and then the 3 books that followed it, which I absolutely love. And he said, "Do you remember, Dad?" He's almost 40 now. He said, "Do you remember, Dad, the time that we went to the restaurant? I think it was King's we went to, north of Pittsburgh." He said, "Remember the time we went to the restaurant?" He said, and we took the book with us, and we read it in King's." And I said, "Oh, my word." I said, "I've forgotten all about that." But they insisted, as it turns out. They wanted us to do what we would have done at home, but we did it there in King's. And it was great. Great that he remembered it, that it obviously had made a difference. But so important, as you say, to keep doing that, even when your kids get older, if they're still enjoying it.
Yeah, yeah. It's just a great way to have conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those conversations, talk about a valuable way to spend your time. You're in the van with your kids going to school and soccer and ballet, and you have a choice. You can turn on an audiobook and listen and talk about it. You can talk about something you read together, something you're co-reading, or you can listen to some music, which you might find objectionable at some point.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just a way. It's the relationship thing again, isn't it? You got the book, and you've got, your family, and God's there in the mix, and it's just this lovely kind of, collection of relationships that just, hopefully carry on. Yeah. Because, you've made it a priority when they were younger.
Yeah. Hey, what's next in the Clever Cub series?
Well, we've got the Easter one is coming up. The Easter one, I think, has just recently come out. So it's the one that we're going to be focused on at the moment, because obviously Easter's coming out. But I've written 6 more in the series. Yeah. So this is just kind of the first bunch. So we've got, I think one of them is about Miriam, and one of them is about the spies going into Canaan. And I just wrote one about Esther. So yeah, we're trying to cover as many Bible stories as possible.
Awesome. Hey, before I ask you to tell folks where they can go to find out more about Clever Cub, did you always imagine yourself writing children's books, or was this something that it was a happy surprise along your journey?
I think it was a happy surprise. I always loved to write, and frankly, the thing about being a pastor that I liked the best was the communication side of it. But I guess, like a lot of people, I thought, I could never, I'll never get anything published. That's never going to happen, And then when I tried it and it actually worked, it was like, wow, all right then, we'll just keep doing this. It's good. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, it was a lovely, delightful surprise. And 30 years later, I'm just really grateful. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Bob, please tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Clever Cub.
If you go to David C. Cook on their website, that's where you can find out about him. They're the ones who publish him. Or really, if you just put Clever Cub, you Google that will pop up, because I think he's the only Clever Cub knocking about. Yeah.
Awesome. And is there a website where folks can find out more about you?
Sad to say, I don't have a website. I'm pretty pathetic, really. I'm probably the only person in the universe that doesn't have a website. But if you go to YouTube and put Bob Hartman, Storyteller in there, then lots of videos will pop up. That'll be the best way to do it.
Wonderful.
The lead guitarist for the Christian rock band Petra, his name is also Bob Hartman. So if you see a guy playing a guitar, that ain't me.
That's the other Bob.
That's the other guy. Yeah.
We've had a great time speaking with the author of Clever Cub, Bob Hartman. Hey, Bob, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast with a special guest to celebrate Easter, Stan J.R. Zurkowski. He is the LGBTQ Outreach Director for the Diocese of Lexington in Kentucky, the Catholic Diocese of Lexington in Kentucky. He is here to celebrate his brand new book. It's Coming Out and Coming Home. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, we would love to connect with you on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at readingwithyourkids on Instagram, at readingwithyourkids on TikTok, Pinterest. We have a great Reading With Your Kids page on Pinterest, and on Twitter, it is at Jedley Magic. We'd love to have you join us on social media. We post all sorts of great content out there. We would also love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Sign up for our free newsletter. And also, please feel welcome to send us a message using the contact button at the top of the page. Let us know what we're doing well. Let us know what we could be doing better. Let us know who you would like to hear on an upcoming episode of the podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Bob Hartman. Please be sure to check out the Clever Cub series and also check out the YouVersion Bible app for kids. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Lori Grady, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.